Align and Awaken with Mother Earth Rising podcast. Let's rise and heal together with me, Pippa, your Mother Earth healer. Hey, beautiful souls. Welcome back. So I have decided to come on today to talk about ego versus higher self. It is something that I touch on most of my episodes, but there is a massive difference between the two. Now, for some of you who don't know me, I am the ego coach and Mother Earth healer. Now, what I call myself doesn't matter. It's just a title. It's not the core of who I am. But the work that I adore and the work that I find so fascinating, so rewarding is the ego and what the ego makes us do, what the ego makes us think. And ultimately, it's the work that I do with my clients. So some of you may know about ego. You probably heard ego being thrown around on social media. Now, I will say I've actually come off social media. I came off last week. I woke up, had a calling to come off. It was just not serving me. I had a really good chat with a friend today, and I just said, I feel like Facebook, if Facebook was a person, it would be so in ego, because I just feel it's not a great place at the moment for a lot of light workers because of the energy on there. And for light workers, you know, technology is hard for us to be around all the time. And that's one thing I've been noticing. And for me on Facebook, there is a lot of comparison, a lot of competition, and it's just not serving me in the way I want it to. And, you know, I have no judgments. I don't hold any judgments to anyone who's on there. But personally, for me, it's just not serving me. So that will lead me on to that being a higher self decision. Now, if I let myself stay in ego, my ego would have told me, oh, you need to stay on social media. Social media is the only way you will get clients. Social media is part of your life and you cannot come off it. You know, they're the types of things that your ego tells you that, you know, you shouldn't be doing something. But the ego only thinks for itself. It doesn't think of the wider perspective. Now, my higher self, on the other hand, is the one that is my soul. It's the true self. And, you know, the negative ego is the false self. So I have I've listened to my intuition and, took that advice. And the thing is with the ego, again, you know, the ego is our sense of self-esteem and self-importance. But I want to always say this in whenever I'm speaking to clients and in general, the ego has been labeled as something like really bad, and it's not really true. You know, there is the negative ego, the toxic ego, which has completely taken over our thoughts, our actions. But as I've mentioned, the ego was actually designed to protect us. You know, it's the one that tells us to get out of danger, you know, make sure we're eating, make sure we're looking after ourselves. But as we have grown as humanity, our ego has been attached to different things. So since it's your sense of identity, you know, it's part of the brain that is conscious and subconscious. So it's that voice in your head that desperately clings to its false identity. So think about when you're in your own thoughts and you have those good thoughts, like, follow your heart, follow your intuition. But it's like that little annoying monkey on your shoulder. No, don't do that. What if it goes wrong? You know, that is the ego, and it is pretending that it's trying to protect you when ultimately it's actually limiting you. So you can't completely get rid of the ego, but you can heal and let it take a back seat. You know, that's why I get my clients to name their ego. So you can just have a little chat with your ego. And then obviously once you start to become aware of this is where the higher self comes into play, because your higher self is your true self on a soul level. And it's a huge aspect of who you truly are. You know, your higher self is, you think, that's why I say think of a baby. A baby has no ego. That's why, we end up having this ego through, what we've been through growing up. And say it's not your fault, but we have been programmed since childhood, subconsciously on so many levels, from our parents, our experiences, society, traumas, and the identity or the personality we develop is, it's multi-faced. We have so many aspects to us because we are living in this 3D world. And, many fall into the trap of the ego and we're just disconnected from the higher self. A lot of us aren't even connected to our higher self. A lot of clients that come to me aren't even aware they have a higher self. They just think this is the norm. So the realization occurs when you step into enlightenment of self-awareness and know that, look, where you come from. So that self-awareness, that consciousness, the healing and the spirituality has become the best version of you. So this higher aspect of you looks at things from a soul level. As one goes through like an awakening, they become more aware of expansive, connected energy we all share as one. Because again, if we've all come from the same energy, we're all that's in a part of every single one of us. And our higher self is guiding us on a soul level. It's that innate wisdom, your intuition, your most authentic self. And once you connect that energy, you can just see your whole world shift. And a lot of I had my quantum shift last year. And since then, I've had more shifts and more shifts and more shifts. So as a collective, we're in this massive shift and we're all having these awakenings. There's so many souls on the earth that have been disconnected from the higher self because we aren't doing the work. We're just getting up, getting dressed, going to work, coming home. We're not sitting with ourselves and, becoming aware of how we speak, how we act, who we're spending time with, what are we reading, what are we doing with our life. So we become disconnected from the higher self and the universal divine energy which we all come from. So the goal in spirituality is to be an embodiment of the higher self, but in your physical body, because your higher self is your soul and your soul is living in this physical body. And yes, we have to have a human experience. We have to know what it feels like to be. We wouldn't have come to Earth otherwise. We would have just said, oh, I'll pass Earth. I'll just go past. Nah, I don't want to go to that planet. I'll go to the next planet. So when we merge the higher self, when we start to, bring that into existence, you start to align with who you truly are. The ego can still exist on some level, but it gets put on the back seat because your higher self becomes the conscious driver. So, think about the ego. You can sit at the back of the car. I'm the driver. I'm in the driving seat now. And you can still tune into the ego. But, once you embody the higher self, it no longer controls you because you become fully aware of when you're in your ego and when you fall into the ego trap. And you start to know the difference. Chris and I do it all the time. When he's triggered or I'm triggered, we'll go, I'm in ego now. And we'll actually just say to ourselves, I'm in ego now. But we're aware of it and we pull ourselves out of it. And it doesn't last that long. But I know, years ago, I would have sat in ego for weeks. So there are certain signs and patterns that you'll experience when you're in this energy. You'll just know. And there are a few ways to know when you're in ego and how to shift to the higher self. So you have a choice to heal within and come face to face with your shadow. And this can be the most difficult thing in spirituality, but it's worth every single minute of this work. So this also applies to anyone, dealing with that may be living from the ego. So understand that oftentimes, many people are completely unaware that they're doing this. Again, it's the awareness. Once you click into that awareness, especially with the anxiety you feel, that, that it's just that inner voice that isn't serving you. So Chris and I have just released a podcast around judgment, and the energy that the ego is mostly in is judgment and a negative internal dialogue. Remember when I mentioned the ego is constantly telling you you're not good enough, you'll never find true love, and it's a load of BS. And, it's that negative voice within you. So This happens by either completely belittling yourself and others, or going the opposite and making themselves better than others. So the ego will never have enough. The ego always wants more. It's never fulfilled. The higher self could live off the land and be satisfied and be happy. And, we spoke about Maslow and the hierarchy. That's Chris and I used our course as a hierarchy, but think of Maslow. Self-actualization is the top of that triangle. And that is what the higher self is. It's that point in your life where you think, I'm satisfied exactly where I am. I don't need any material things. I don't need anything else in my life. I'm just happy as I am. So when you put yourselves better than others, this can then result in placing yourself on a high pedestal of being above others. So again, the ego wants to get ahead. The ego wants to be better than others. And this is why I come off social media, because I feel like a lot of people on there, and this isn't me judging others, this is just me being honest and open, that it isn't a competition. There is so much out there for every single one of us. There's enough for every single person on this planet. So remember, the ego is the false identity and the sense of self. So when it's threatened, it feels like it needs to protect and attack. So imagine when you're having an argument with your partner or a family member, and they come at you and they attack you. Your initial response is to attack back. If you can, as you say, bite your tongue, send them love and walk away from that, you may still get triggered, which is quite normal. But if you can just pull yourself away from that situation and go upstairs and journal, what bothered you about that? And you're actually serving both of you, because you're not feeding either of your egos. So when you embody the higher self, there are no judgments. All you do is observe and accept, because that's one thing I'm learning to do now, is being more silent and observing. If you're in a room full of people and they're giving their opinion about things, how quick are you to jump in to give your opinion? How easy is it for you to just sit back and think, I'm going to sit back and stay quiet? It's really difficult at times, because especially when you're a confident speaker like me, I want to be able to get my point across. But one thing I'm learning, especially reading the Tao, is being silent and observing. And if someone gives an opinion to me that resonates with what I believe, instead of me saying, well, I think this, instead I say, thank you for that point of view. I've never really considered it that way, but thank you for sharing. And look how much that feels light, instead of biting back with your opinion. So it is about self-love and positive self-talk. But it does take a lot of work to get to that point, of differentiating between the two. Sometimes you actually have to completely immerse yourself in the ego so you can become your higher self. You have to listen to your ego, what it wants to say. If I do drop an ego, I want to listen, because again, your ego, is protecting your inner child too, which is, I will go into another podcast, but your inner child is, can be wounded, and it has its own traumas and things, and beliefs. So your ego is protecting that. So, but once you do start to do this work, the shifts that will happen, not in just your own energy, but in the vibrational frequency that you live in, your relationships will change, your friendships will change. And this is a huge part of living, and manifesting, because then we're coming into the 5D. We're living in a 3D world, and getting to that 4D where you're more inquisitive and you become more aware. And then when you get to the 5D, it's another level. So my advice to you is, don't be so hard on yourself. Be gentle with yourself. We are human. We are all learning. We have to just let go and let God, as Wayne says. And as long as you can come into awareness and be mindful enough to actually check in with yourself, you will always expand. You will always expand that energy. And remember that your ego is there to protect you, and we don't want to delete the ego. It's not the end goal. We're here to just become aware of it and know the differences between the two. And when you are triggered, that's when we can work through why you're triggered, because it will stem from a past memory. And that is the work that I do. It's really important work. So if you're one of those people who's just always in, that anxious energy, you sit and fester on thoughts for days, you're always in self-sabotage mode, your negative self-talk gets on top of you, I want you to reach out to me. I'm here to serve, and I know a lot of you will resonate with this. So I would love to hear from some of you so I can help you with those triggers and help you with that ego, because it is, having someone by your side who gets it and who understands and who is compassionate and non-judgmental. That's what the ego needs. It needs that, to be able someone to hold space. And that's what I'm here to do. So anyone who is resonating with this, please reach out to me. I would love to connect with some of you. I'm not on social media for a while, so if you want to reach out to me, you can send me an email. It's guidance@beautyisfoundwithin.com. And you can still send me a message on Facebook. But yes, I'm looking forward to hearing off some of you. And keep doing the work, guys. Don't give up. There are better times always ahead. And as Wayne says, sometimes when we go through the suffering, it's enlightenment through suffering. So, it's just not going to, everything is temporary. So if you're going through a suffering time right now, it always gets better and things will shift. So I'm sending you loads of love wherever you are listening to this. And I look forward to hearing from some of you soon. Take care, guys.